Hello Internet, welcome back to our low poly shader. In this video we are going to be hopefully adding some color and also doing some diffuse lighting. We're going to have to implement the lighting ourselves, so we're going to start with diffuse lighting because that's the easiest. We'll probably add specular lighting in the next video, but I figure it's easiest to start with each of them because they're totally separate and they can kind of be layered on top of one another. Once we get both of those, we might be able to implement some more Unity style lighting, but I'm not sure about that. So we're actually going to get started over in our planet ring because we have this world space light position 0, which I'm going to just steal for a second and copy over here. We're not to this point yet, but I want to bring that in. That's going to represent the point where our directional light is coming from, which we're going to need for our diffuse lighting. So we're not going to use that yet, but we need it later, so I'm bringing it in. What else do we need? We have that. This is where we are currently. We've kind of got this exploded sphere, and it's exploded by just a set amount. That's just for testing. There's no reason to this. You can see it goes all the way around. What we want to do now is first, I have a few textures. I've got a water texture and then a rock texture. They're both super low resolution, and that's totally fine. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of layer that texture over this model, and then at each of the points we're going to take the pixel at that point, get the color, average them, and then that is going to be the color for our triangle. So this way we can actually apply a texture and it will kind of pull out some of the detail of that texture without us actually giving it a texture. I think it'll look cool. I've never done it before though, so who knows. Pretty much the way I made these textures is I just found some colors that I liked, and then I just kind of added some noise to it until it kind of got weird. You can see down here we've got sort of like this brown with some darker splotches and a little bit of like redder tones, and then the water is almost pure blue. There's some darker and lighter blues in there a little bit, but it's relatively smooth, and it should hopefully give us a speckled look. And then when we add lighting, it should even accent that more. So we have that. What we need to do is actually get that color, which means we're going to need to provide a diffuse color out of our geometry shader. So we can just uncomment that. We're passing in UV coordinates into our geometry shader already. So we already have everything we need. All we need to do is I'm actually going to jump back to here, and we have a texture lookup, which is this. We're just passing the texture and then the UV coordinates. I'm just going to copy this function just so we have the correct one. But all we need to do is actually grab the color 3 times. So we'll call it C1, which will be this. And we want to pull out our main texture. So we're going to grab the main texture, and then we're going to grab the UV coordinates from our input. So we're going to pass in 0 here, and then we're going to take, instead of the position, we're just going to use our UV, and that should give us our UV coordinates there. We can copy that 2 more times and then plug both of those together. So this should get us 3 colors at the UV coordinates of our triangles. We're not going to worry about everything in the middle of the triangle right now. That would be nice to consider. But unfortunately with this approach, there isn't a really good way to do that. We could use like barycentric coordinates to actually get some points in the center of it. But I'm not going to do that right now. We may, depending on how this looks, we may come back and touch it up a bit. So we've got C1, C2, and C3. I'm going to rename these to C0, C1, and C2, just so it lines up with everything. And then the final color is going to be another float 3, and that is going to be equal to C0 plus C1 plus C2, and then divided by 3. So it's going to be just the average of all three of them. There's no fancy stuff going on here, literally just an average. And then we can uncomment that diffuse we took out last time and plug back into it here. And there we go. And so now our color is getting plugged into each of the diffuses on our triangle, which means the entire triangle is going to be a single shade. And so in here, we should actually get that out and be able to plug it in. So in dot diffuse color dot RGB. This should get us our diffuse color with an alpha of 1. Or not. It's broken like it always is. We may not be able to do texture lookups here. Can we do our lotted texture? Our level of detailed texture, maybe? If not, then we can get around this using our vertex. Actually, that's a better idea already. Because here we have to do a texture lookup 3 times for each vertex, because however many triangles are connected at that single point, we're going to have to look up that color repeatedly for everything that shares that point. If we do that in the vertex shader instead, it'll actually be faster because we won't have to look that up. So we're going to do out.color, and we're going to output our color. It's going to be a texture coordinate of 1. That's just an open space, really. There's no particular reason. It doesn't have to align with this. There's no reason behind this name. It just, you need a name to this. And texture coordinates are probably the easiest ones to use. So they're what we're going to use. But we don't necessarily need those yet, because I am getting far ahead of myself. We've got our lotted text 2D. It expects a float 4? Why would it expect a float 4? Huh. Seems to be working though. So if I do the UV coordinates of that UV, no, it's not going to like that either. Okay. So we are going to abandon that idea and pull out our color here. So now we have a color coming out of our vertex and into our graphics shader. So we need our color here, which means we need to get it, which is going to be a text 2D LOD, our main texture. We're going to do in, not in, we don't need that anymore. We just need our texture coordinates. And that should be everything we need to get our color. And we just need to set the RGB value there. And then, instead of these C0, C1, etc., we can just do in, 0.color and add those 3 up. And then divide them by 3. And that will get us our average color. So there are a number of ways to average colors. You can look at like the RGB values like we're looking at. There's HSV, which is hue, saturation, and Shoot, it's not what you think it is. It's not like value. It's something else. I don't remember what it is. But anyway, there's multiple color spaces. HSV is going to represent sort of the hue, which is going to be like the colors of the rainbow. And then you have the saturation and the whatever. Cool. Sorry, I'm distracted. But we have a brown sphere, which looks boring, admittedly. But we should be able to increase the tiling significantly on this. And we'll kind of get, I would expect a little bit of variance. It's kind of hard to tell though. Yeah, there's no way I'm going to be able to tell. I have a better idea. Let's select this and find something totally ridiculous. There we go. This is a random pro builder texture. But remember, we have no light on this, so all of this is coming from our texture. And so we are plugging in a texture. It's taking the average and then getting us this shape. Which actually, that looks really sweet. I kind of like that. So that's just a random like red brick pattern. We can plug in like a actual logo and we get this. The texture, the UV coordinates haven't been unwrapped or anything, so it's going to look really funky. You're not going to be able to tell what this is. But what you can tell is that it's working. Our averages are calculating correctly. It might calculate the averages a little bit funkily. You may get a lot of grays. And that's what HSV kind of solves. The problem we're going to get here is, say you have a red, a blue, and a green pixel. If you take the average of those, it's just gray, which is boring, really. So as long as the colors are relatively similar, it's gonna bring that out. If they're not, it's gonna look a little bit less interesting. So that's working. That's cool. I think I'm gonna go back to our brick thing. That seemed to be the most accented. I can also remove the extrusion here. We don't need that anymore. That was just totally for example. So we can take off these plus 0.1s of the world normal. And now we should have a sphere, but it's got flat shading. The problem is no lighting. So how do you get lighting? Dot products. If we take the direction of the light and the normal vector, that will get us the lighting. So we should, this is the wrong thing, but what we should be able to do is we have our diffuse color being generated here. We should be able to calculate diffuse lighting as well. We have a normal. We also have a world normal. And so, given those, we should be able to figure out where our light is and then solve that. So, how do we do that? We've got our output position and our light position. I've got that up here. And that should be a float 3, I believe. And we'll just call that the light. Oops, that was wrong. There we go. So this will be our light position. And actually, is there a way world to object space translation? Would that work? So what I'm trying to figure out is we have all of these positions, they're all in object space, which is kind of useful, but not for our cases. It doesn't help. We have world space coordinates, or we have a world space light, and we're trying to figure out where that is in relation to our object. So we can either do everything either has to be in object space or in world space. And right now it's kind of mixed. So we need to figure out which way we need to go. And I'm kind of thinking object space is the way to go. But we're going to have to translate things anyway, so I don't think it matters. So actually, it may be best to not do that, because this is already in world space. We're translating it into world space here. And so I think we should be able to calculate that down here and then get some result there. Yeah, let's do that. So we've got our diffuse color. What we're going to do is multiply this by the light strength, which is going to be, where is it? There. So we want our lighting to be uniform across each flat thing. So we're actually going to do all of our lighting inside of our geometry shader. Similar to the example I was using in the first video. This is sort of just because if we do it here, we do the calculation 3 times. If we do it in our fragment shader, which is the only other place we could do it, we have to do it a lot more. And we don't really need any like per pixel lighting. I don't think that fits the style, so we're not going to worry about it. It seems like the best way to do it. So to get the light strength, ooh, that's wrong. We need some sort of measure. And this is going to be wrong, but I'm just going to do it sort of as an example. So we're going to take the light position, and we're going to take the dot product between that and our normal, which is the normal we calculated for the entire face. And so remember, dot products are going to be between 0 and 1. This needs to be normalized. So we need normalized vectors, because if they aren't, this is not going to work. So actually, let me get a whiteboard, because I'll want to draw this out, just because I think it's more, you'll understand it better if I draw it out. So okay, so the way we're going to use dot products is, say we're lighting a sphere, for example. That's the easiest way because it's got normals facing every direction. If we have our light up here, so it's doing its thing, it's going to hit these faces. We're going to say it's well, actually, let's say it's a point light. That'll be more interesting. It'll fit better. So it's going to shoot a ray out here, hit that. It's going to shoot a ray out this way, and so forth. What we want is we want the direction from this to here. So ideally what we're doing is we're saying, since this is a sphere in this case, we've got normals facing this way and this way and this way and so forth. And so when light strikes something, it's going to light this side, and then this side is all going to be dark, which our dot product defines, because the way a dot product works is if you take a normal, say this, and then you take the normal of this, you'll get a -1 to 1 output, which means 0 would be right along this perpendicular line, and then everything on this side is going to be either positive in some direction or negative, and then everything on this side is going to be negative. So if you clamp this down to 0, everything on the back side, that's already set to 0. That's already unlit. And then everything over here, that's going to be lit by your sun, and it's actually going to fall off because you're ramping from 1, which is directly facing the light, down to 0. And so you can use that to actually control your diffuse lighting. And that's mostly how it's done. We don't have any ambient light that we're using right now, so this is a little bit funky, but it should work. The only issue we will see is this backside is going to be completely black, which isn't normal in any way. But we can fix that later. What we want to do now is just figure out, get the direction of this light, get the direction of the normal, calculate the dot product between the two, and then use that to actually shade our thing. So that's pretty much all we have to do. There's not too much to it. So let's get to it. Right, so we need those dot products. We actually already have that calculation going on here. The only thing we want is we want a maximum here between that and 0, which is going to clamp it between the maximum value, which can be 1, and then 0, which is going to be our minimum. And so there's no point in having negative values. It doesn't add anything. So that's what we're doing. My hair is being particularly weird today. It's trying to eat my head all day. Anyway, we've got our light strength, and then we just apply that to our diffuse color, and we should, if it's not backwards, get something like this. So like I said, it's going to be totally, ooh, that's not good. We may have some problems here. Yeah, something funky's going on. I have done something abominable. What would cause that? Obviously, we're flipping where our light is. Like that. But why that happens, does it make sense? I'm not sure. Let's see, we've got our, this is the wrong project. Should just close that. We're done referencing that. What is going wrong here? Why would that be in two separate ways? Huh. Obviously the position is wrong, but that doesn't explain the flipping. And I think we can probably just do, that won't be in world space though. But we can get it in world space. We can do V0, and we can actually take out, can we do that? Yeah, I don't see why not. We can do that up there, and then just plug V0 in there. That should get us our position. And if we have that, then we should be able to plug it into our function. So we subtract it from the light position, get the difference between the two, and then use our normal as the other operand. Yeah, that makes sense. What else? So before I get too far ahead of myself, what this is doing is it's translating it into world space. So all of our positions are in object space. So every sphere is kind of the same until it actually gets, normally your vertex shader is going to be the one to get something into into world space. Actually, that's wrong. Usually your vertex shader is going to get things into camera space so that it can be drawn on the screen. What we're doing is getting it into world space so that it can actually be worked upon, and then it will all work out from there, I hope. Ooh. That's a vector 3. That doesn't work. Shoot. Okay, scratch that plan. We could solve it that way, but why not just use the world normal? Right? We've got it, so why not try? So this should get the difference between the position and our world normal. Still doing that weird flippy majiggy. Ooh. That's also very weird. We are definitely in the wrong space now. I think that MVP matrix does not do what I thought it did. Because this doesn't look right. For a few reasons. One, that looks like it's far more than 1. Looks like the distance is far more than 1, which is why it's getting so exceedingly yellow on top and very white. That wasn't happening before, so I think something weird is going on there. But also, I think we're in screen coordinates, and that's not what I wanted. So I think this calculation may not be right. And this is the first time we've used it, which would explain that. And if that's the case, then this is translating it into far more than I wanted. Yeah, one sec. Let me find some documentation on what that is doing specifically, because I don't think it's doing what I thought it was doing, which is my fault. But let me just double check, because I'm not so sure anymore. Okay, it didn't do what I thought. That was our projection matrix, which is that other step. That explains what's wrong. We don't want that. That's wrong. So that's right here. We need to get to that point because that's where your model is drawn. So in 3D graphics, I didn't really want to get into this, but we are. In 3D graphics, there's a whole bunch of steps to get something on your screen. You start at like the object level. Can you get below that? Maybe. So let's start at the object level. You have an object. And so everything is going to be in relation to that object. So if you have a cube, you've just got a cube. It's sitting flat on your table, straight. You know what direction everything is in. But then if you like take it as like, say it's a dice, and you start rolling it around, that object, the faces aren't changing in relation to one another, but they are changing in relation to the world. So the first thing you need to do is translate everything into world space, so that everything relates to one another instead of relating to itself. Once you do that, you need to actually project it onto a screen. So that's your view projection, or your view matrix, which gets you to a view. And then you need to run it through a projection matrix. Projection matrices are only needed. I should make sure about this before I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. I believe a projection matrix is only needed if you do a projection style view. So if you're doing like 3D, where things that are further away appear smaller, that's going to be your projection, and that's going to be a separate matrix that actually gets that look. The view itself may not necessarily capture that, but that's going to be where your camera is. So you need to translate things from an object, you need to take that, put it in the world, and then you need to put it in relation to your camera, and then you need to render that and do all of that. So think of it like setting up your scene, positioning your camera, and then actually taking the picture. I don't know if that's a good example, but that's sort of how I've thought of it. So what we've been doing is we're translating all of those points into that final position, that's what you need to do in a shader. That's the point of a shader, is to actually take all of the points in your model and put them there. What we haven't done is actually check. So I've been translating my entire world normal into that space as well, which means it's all relative to our camera, which means it's all sorts of screwed up, which means it's going to change based on the direction of the camera and the scale of the camera and all that. Because these matrices that you're using to translate everything, each of them is going to have a scale, a rotation, and a position. So each matrix can actually move something, can scale it, and it can rotate it. So because we were using the wrong matrix, we meant to use object to world, which I knew. I just thought that was the same. It's not the same. My bad. So now we have object to world. We're taking our normal, getting it into world space from object space. And then we're going to normalize that. Lots of normalizing going on because we need one dimension or one unit vectors. And it's still flipping. Not sure about that. That doesn't seem right. But at least our normal is correct-ish. Yeah, so something else is blowing up in our face, but I think I know what that is. A file has unsaved changes. Yes. Okay. Sure. We'll do whatever that asks me to do. We've got our world normal. We're normalizing it. That's all good. We've got our light position. We're going to subtract off the multiplication of one of our vertices. I don't particularly care which one, but we just need one of them to get the kind of the light direction. So I'm going to choose the 0, multiply that by our object to world. Looks like it auto-corrected for us to Unity object to world. Unity will run through your scripts and compile them, and will make any changes that it thinks it needs to. If you are using like deprecated stuff, it will try to upgrade it, and that appears to be what it did. And it will actually leave a note at the top of your shader if that's the case. So it has, and that's what it did. So this multiplication is going to get us our difference, and now it's broke because we are using all sorts of the wrong stuff. We want that to be an X, Y, Z. That doesn't matter. It already should be. I'm going to just translate that. I think that we need that anyway. But our normalize, our normalize should normalize the difference between the two. And now we should hopefully get a black sphere. That doesn't seem right. I needed to read this. So the world space light position doesn't always represent the world space light position. When it's a directional light, like we're using, that means it's going to be this. So it's going to be the world space direction, and then if it's some other like point light, or for example, it'll be the world space position and 1. So we can actually use that, which means we need absolutely none of that. There we go. That's all gone. World space direction, normalized, normalized, still broke. Let me test this. Let's write out our normal. Actually, we're testing our world normal, so let's write that out instead. So I'm just going to copy this to each of these. If I didn't do it to all of them, well, it would look like that, which is actually kind of cool. but it's not particularly helpful. The reason it looks like that is because each of our triangles is going to be interpolated between. So we're only setting one of them if we do that. And since we aren't setting all of them, it interpolates between those and the other two colors it would try to be, which isn't what we want. So if we set them all to the world normal, we should get RGB is what it's going to be. So green is going to be our Y value. Red is going to be our X value. And Z is going to be our blue. And so as long as this doesn't change, and it doesn't appear to, and that looks correct, and I should be able to rotate this and we won't get any change because it's world space, remember? So this isn't being affected by the rotation of the model. That's all good. That means we're pretty confident that that is correct. So if we're confident our world normal is correct, then that means something else must be screwed up. Because this, well, I guess we can do that again for our light position. That ought to give us a similar consistent thing, because that should also be in world space. If it's flipping, something weird is going on. Yeah, I don't get it. So that's our problem. Something is causing our light to switch. But what? Why? That doesn't make any sense to me. I have never seen that happen before. Not sure. I don't know what would cause that. Maybe this will fix it if I set the sun there, but it doesn't. No, that didn't fix it. So I need to figure out what this is, what's causing this, because for some reason it's shifting between dark blue, which is going to be something on our Z, and then like light green, which seems correct. But because it keeps flipping, that's not going to work. We need something that is going to be consistent. And I selected a particle system, which when they have trails for some reason, it lags a ton. So I was just going to disable that to see if that was causing any issues. No. I have broken something. And I don't know what. So one thing I might try. No, so it happens here as well. In game. Actually, let me check something. Are we using? That's not what I wanted. Let's look at our player. Let's use linear lighting, or linear color space rather. So there's two color spaces, linear and gamma. Gamma is going to try to correct a little bit more for your darker ranges, because if you look at a scale of what your monitor supports, there will appear to be like these lines in the darker ranges, just because there's only 256 colors, or per color there's only 256 options, and on the darker range that's just not enough. So what gamma does is it kind of shifts things, so there's less in the higher color space, and there's more in the lower color space. So in darker environments, it kind of helps prevent all that screen tearing and stuff. This is not working. But that wasn't what I was going to check. What was I going to check? I wanted to see if we were using forward or deferred rendering. Because what we have, I don't think is going to support deferred. And if it is, that would explain at least part of the issue. Graphics. Okay. How many times do I have to try before I get what I want? Physics player. Also not right. I've already been here. Screw it. I know how to fix this. Main camera. Where is it? Graphic settings. Forward. Okay, that's broken. What about legacy? Okay, it works with the legacy shader. Deferred. Okay, deferred has the same issue. What? Okay. So why would it work with the legacy vertex lighting shader, but not with the new version? I feel like that's a... What else would cause that other than something being broken? I don't know. So we're going to pretend like that's fine. And we're going to pretend like that was intentional. And then we're just going to write it for this. And then I will see what is going on with the different rendering modes, because that doesn't really make sense. Something's causing it to get messed up. And I maybe something I did, and maybe something going on with Unity. Not sure. But if I revert back to what we had previously with the color, we are going to get this, which is our diffuse lit sphere. And it's lit by that light up there. And it's smooth. So if I go in game, you'll see it's relatively smooth, which is what we wanted. It only took way longer than it should have, but we got there. So this is sort of our smooth thing. You can texture it, and it does something. I don't really know what that is, but it's something. And so yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. Why did it go black suddenly? I feel like something is just not... Like, what is that? What is that? Where did it go? Why, when I select it, does it go black? There's nothing that I could have done that would have caused that. Is there? Somebody's going to say there was something I did that caused it, and that's probably going to be true. All right. But it... All right. I think we need to be done, because we've got diffuse shading. I'm going to say it works, even though that's clearly up in question right now. But in the next few videos, we are going to be adding probably some specular mapping. So we'll get those bright specks that you see in like water or metal or something. And then we'll also look into probably integrating with Unity's like normal lighting system, so we can get some shadows coming off of this, as well as a few other things. So yeah, more to come. So if there's anything you guys want to see, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if there's anything you think I can improve, clearly I need help. So let me know. But until next time, see you, Internet.